We're still missing two
Okay.
people, I think.
Yeah, so Mike McCoo will not be coming, and Erica Bouchard also will not be in attendance tonight. They reached out to me earlier.
And Peter will be late. I'm
He will
sure.
be late.
If that's one thing you can predict with Peter.
Oh, so he can call you then.
No, he didn't call me. Peter's just consistently late with meetings.
Okay, well, let's get started. It's 6:39. Again, I appreciate your patience. And so we'll call the meeting to order. It's 6:39 p.m. This meeting is being recorded. First order of business is present to speak. Is there anyone on the call that would like to speak? If you choose not to now, there is an opportunity at the end of the meeting. Okay, seeing no one. Chairperson report. I do have an agenda item I'd like to add, and then I'll see if anybody else wants to add an agenda item. We did visit a couple sites that we'd like to talk about with the committee in executive session. So I'd like to make a motion to add an executive session discussion to new business item C.
Second.
Could I say that that's for the purpose of real estate, potential real estate transactions? Yes. We need to say the reason.
Right, to, yes, for potential, the site visits and per the executive sessions, CGS 1-200, discussion of selection of site or lease or real estate, yes.
Okay.
So we have, I made the motion, Erica seconded it. Is there any discussion about it? If not, we'll go to a vote. Is there any discussion about adding this item? Not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, we will add this executive session item to new business item C to discuss the site visits and potential selection of a site or lease. Okay, next item.
Catherine?
Hi, Peter.
Catherine?
Yes, sorry.
One more possible item to add. Do we wish to discuss our visit to Birch Meadow? Or can we just, it's on
the
there?
agenda.
Okay. Perfect, thank
It
you.
is,
Oh, I
yeah,
see it.
it's item
Hello,
C.
I see it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep, so we're, I just added a request to add a new business item on the agenda, Peter. Anybody else that wants to add anything else before I move on with my chairperson report? Okay, so the next item I had on my chairperson report was Alice Castles did reach out to me. She is with the Hall Foundation, and she did confirm that she received our questions that we had sent her a few months back, and that her and the Hall Foundation are reviewing those questions and they're finalizing the questions, and that she is going to reach back out to me when she wants to meet with us in person. So we will, as soon as she reaches out to me, we'll set that up. And there was another death in her family, and so it might be a little while, but she did sound like she was eager to have a discussion with us. And then last thing is I just wanted to open up to the committee as we approach the summer schedule. I know that a lot of us are going to have some vacations planned, and I'd like everyone to just take a look at the schedules that we have for our meetings. Hasn't changed, but the meeting schedule is posted on our website. So just take a look at those over the next few months and let me know if they conflict with any vacation plans that you guys might have. You can send them to the SBC email or my personal email. Everyone should have that. And just, I'd like to just coordinate who is going to be at what meeting and whether or not we have to cancel any meetings for the summer. Okay, moving on to approval of the meeting minutes. So the first item, SBC Land Assessment Committee, unfortunately, we don't have meeting minutes from that meeting, but they will be up. They will be emailed to everybody, and we'll have an opportunity to approve those at our next meeting. The SBC meeting minutes from March 16th will, everybody should have been emailed those, as well as the Finance Committee meeting minutes. So I'd like to see, is there a motion on the floor to approve the SBC meeting minutes of March 16th?
So moved.
Second? For a second?
A second.
Erica? Okay, any discussion? No discussion? Let's take a vote. Let's do see if everyone's in agreement to approve the meeting minutes of March 16th. Let's take a vote. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any objections? Any abstentions?
One,
Brianna.
Brianna.
So now we have to do a roll call vote. So I'm a yes, and
I'm an aye.
what's that?
I'm an aye. Sorry.
That's a
I
yes?
was in a dead spot.
Oh, that was an aye. I thought that was an abstention. I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
Okay, so let's rewind. So the meeting minutes from March 16th, we'll do this again. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, meeting minutes are approved from the March 16th. Let's move on to the SBC Finance Subcommittee meeting minutes. Those were dated March 11th. Again, everybody should have been emailed those. Is there a motion on the floor to approve those meeting minutes of March 11th for the Finance Subcommittee? Erica,
So moved.
second?
I'll second.
Discussion? I actually, Phil, was that you? No, I actually had a couple questions or clarifications, and maybe we can just get clarification of the meeting minutes on this. Item 10, it looks like the very last sentence, it says, SP also mentioned based on the state requirements, we cannot just combine to one school based on state regulations. Can someone clarify that, what that
So-
means?
Based on the meeting, as Hall School stood right now, we can't just move all the students into the school as it stands today. We have to do a renovation or something would have to change.
I think that was
Mhm.
Scott's comment, was it not?
Yeah, but that was, the discussion was that we couldn't just move all the kids into one school. It was, I mean, that was the comment that was made, and it's an accurate statement.
Okay, thank you. The next question I had was item 11. It says PL brought up most people, the thing seems clear. I'm just not sure what that means. So Peter, it looks like you, PL brought, I just don't know what that means. We could just get a clarification on that.
So I wrote them so I can kind of try to fill you in what I was trying to write there. So Peter, I just brought up that the idea was that most people in the town we need to try to change and go to one school. Sorry. Trying to reread what I wrote and say it at the same time too, and it's not working.
So is there any way we can just make an amendment to those two paragraphs to make it a little more clear? And we just take a vote on it for next meeting? Is there any objection to that?
The comments in discussion after the motion has been made and prior to voting on it would be reflected in the minutes of this meeting, and that should cover it.
Okay,
Agree with Ralph. The minutes would not be rewritten. They would remain the way they are. The reflection of any adjustments are reflected in the minutes of the meeting where they're approved and or adjusted.
okay, so how do we, so can we get, Justin, is there any way you can send me a revision? Add it to these
No.
meeting minutes?
They would be reflected in the dialogue, in the conversation of these minutes. So as these minutes are written, the clarification statement Justin made would be noted in these minutes.
Okay,
So
so
what he
10
just said would be reflected.
okay, so 10 was clear, but I'm still not clear on 11.
Peter, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Sorry. Catherine, in that conversation, I think that Justin took the minutes of what I was saying at the time was there is a kind of a consensus of all the groups in town involved with this project that we agree a single school is a good starting point. There doesn't seem to be a lot of public interest in separate schools, but it was a general comment. It wasn't anything that I was stating as a fact or implying that the committee was going in any particular direction, but I just felt that was the one common thread that we had so far in this project.
Okay, that's helpful. Just as a reader, it can be, it can be interpreted a bunch of different ways. So I appreciate you expressing clarification to that. So we'll make that reflection in these meeting minutes to clarify those two items. So we have a motion on the table for a motion on the floor and a second, and we had a discussion. Is there any discussion, any additional discussion besides what I had on these meeting minutes? If not, we can move to vote with the clarification of these items. So we'll do a vote. All in favor to approve the meeting minutes of March 11th for the subcommittee, finance subcommittee, say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on to communications. The Willington Wire has been posted on the town website. I had it on my screen. I don't know if I think I can share. Phil, can I share my screen real quick?
Can.
All right, can you guys see that?
It was page, it's way down the end.
Yeah, I was starting to panic. I was like, oh my God, they missed it, but.
Right there.
So
Whoa,
right after.
yeah. You went by it. There you go, right there.
It's coming. It's a little slow, Ralph.
Yeah, scroll down a little and I think you got it.
Yeah, so I just wanted to bring this up because there were some people that were not in attendance at our last meeting. We did talk about the publishing of the school building committee update. And so the first paragraph basically talks about us hiring the OPM. Scott Scott Pellman, and then it also talks about how we're evaluating 2 scenarios, which is the Hall Memorial and land for a new consolidated school. Next paragraph talks about the educational specs that we're currently in process of developing with Phil and his group. And then also talked about the Peter Prouder, hiring him for the enrollment study. And then there was a section, where was it? Did I miss it? I think I missed it. Hang on. So let me just jump back a second. When we talked about the 2 scenarios regarding the renovation of Hall and then the evaluation of land, we also put in a sentence in here to reach out to anybody with property that they have a minimum of 20 usable acres, that if anybody was donating land, to reach out to the SBC chairperson, which is myself. So we did include that. That was something the Land Assessment Committee had recommended, that we do a reach out to the public. So that's that. Board of Education, we talked about that. The School Building Committee hired the Peter Prouder for the enrollment study. And then the last paragraph was a brief update on the capital improvement projects that are in place for both schools as we sit now. So that is the Willington Wire, and that is located on our town website, if you guys haven't seen it. And that's all I have for communications. I don't have any new emails that came in for the SBC committee. So we can move on to subcommittee reports. Are there any questions right now regarding anybody from the committee? Okay, so we'll go to subcommittee reports. The communications?
No meeting.
No meeting? Land Assessment Committee? Does someone want to give a brief update of the last meeting?
I think what we can talk about right now is the Moose Meadow Road property that the town owns. That Catherine, you and I walked that a little bit with Scott. I think Scott had kind of ruled that one out at first glance. A site walk, I think both Catherine and I feel that there's some potential there, so that it shouldn't be ruled out yet. We're going to have to look at it a little bit closer with respect to terrain and how it's going to affect what we could do with it. I don't know if Scott's had an opportunity to just to plug in the fields and the building on that site. And then there was another site that we'll discuss later. That's
Thank you,
essentially all we did.
Yeah. Okay, and Mike will be issuing meeting minutes from that, but he did record the meeting, and I'm assuming it'll be up on the website, YouTube, pretty soon. Finance Subcommittee report.
I apologize and regret to inform everyone that the inept chair of this committee failed to file the agenda for the meeting. Therefore, we could not meet as we were scheduled to before this meeting. We have a lot of good directions to go in from the last meeting. So I look forward to our next meeting, which will be before our regular meeting, to review some additional data since the last meeting that will help us support the larger committee.
Thank you, Peter. All right, we'll jump down to old business. So we have 2 items: the owner's project manager Collier's update, which is our regular discussion, and then item B is a discussion of future use of school buildings. So item B, we had this on our meeting from last 2 weeks ago, and we wanted to put it on again here as old business to give the opportunity to anybody that missed last meeting to comment. It will not be on our next meeting, So we just wanted to bring it up again as old business. So let's start with owner's project manager Collier's update. Scott? Can't hear you, Scott. Uh-oh, he's having the same problem I am. You look like you're unmuted. You want us to jump down to the other one until? Yeah, okay. All right, so let's jump down down to item B, discussion of future use of school building. Again, we did talk about this in our meeting a couple weeks ago. Just want to give the committee a chance to
Got ducked out. He'll be back. Catherine, you're muted. Well, you're muted on the screen. Never mind. I'm sorry. I forgot
talking,
you're on.
Ralph.
You're on both.
Ralph, patience, patience.
No, I know.
So who was not at our last meeting? I can't remember. Ann, I don't know if Peter or Ann were there. Justin, did you have any ideas about future use of the schools in the event we move to a new?
I mean, I read through the minutes from the last meeting, but you know, between different departments in town, and I'm hoping we can use it for something to possibly replace something else if necessary. You know, like center school, I don't know. I don't have any other options really to add to the group.
Yeah, there was quite a few great ideas that were brought to the table. I don't have last week's meeting out in front of me, but Peter, did you? I don't know if Peter was in our meeting last.
I
Go ahead,
was.
Peter.
I was, and I'll share the same thoughts I had at that meeting as well as in our subcommittee meeting. I think it's very important that we consider those options, but also recognize that it's highly unlikely, given the financial resources of the town, that we could fund a new school project and renovating one of these former buildings for a different use. If anyone's been following our budget process, our capital budget is quite strained already. So the thought of multiple large-scale projects, I don't think is that plausible. Now, that said, if something really creative comes up where we say remove a building, say the town office building, and replace it with a renovated project, and our actual costs are reduced in some sort of net swap, that might make sense, but it seems beyond the scope of our committee. So I'm very concerned that we not make the mistake that Wyndham has made, Stafford has made, where they said, oh, we'll find a use for these buildings at a later date. And those communities now have large vacant buildings that are now Superfund sites. So I think it's important that we stick to our task, and depending on the project we potentially select, that demolition of both buildings be in our cost structure if we need to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Ann?
I support Erica's suggestion about the town doing a facility study, maybe once we make a decision about which way we're going with the school. And then I think we can identify some, possible uses at that point. The other thing is with the whole historic Willington district, there may be some interesting possibilities for Hall if we did decide to go with a new school, and Hall ended up being left. So there might be some interesting ideas for that. And we could also take Alice's and the Hall Foundation suggestions, and if they have any ideas about what they would like to do with it, of course, since it's theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Gary?
I just wanted to add that at the last meeting, I mentioned that I would try to call a couple of developer folks that have repurposed properties similar to Hall School before. I'm still working on that. I haven't had much luck. But I'm still going to try to do that and see if there's somebody that we can bring in with some expertise that could just give us kind of some preliminary thoughts without any promises, just some ideas for us to throw around. So just wanted to report on that.
Great. Thanks, Gary. Scott, how you making out?
Oh, boy.
God, are you able to hear us? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear us? Your cell phone is muted right now. I can see on the participant screen.
Do *6, and that should unmute you. Are you
No.
calling in?
Hold on,
Okay.
Scott. Let's see.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
There we go.
Now we can, yes.
Oh, modern technology.
I know. I wonder if it's something with the Zoom thing, but anyway, moving on. I appreciate everybody's comments. Are there any other comments to add regarding the discussion of future use of school buildings? Okay. So we'll jump back up to item A, the owner's project manager Collier's update. So go ahead, Scott.
All right, thank you, Catherine. As I think you're aware, our real focus at the moment has been reviewing land and looking at available land. I did go back and we can start with this, as Ralph had noted, walked the property on Moose Meadow again. And I did, Ralph, go ahead and just do a real quick test fit. It still is a fairly steep grade. I think it would be some significant site work associated with that. And if I can share my screen, I can just bring the graphic up quickly.
Yes, you can.
Okay, can everyone see? So
Yeah, we can.
here's Moose Meadow Road here. There's actually an existing curb cut right in this area. I did go back, Ralph and Catherine, and study it a little bit more. The place that's in the wooded area, I think that the stone wall is about here. So where we were looking, where potentially, there was even a little bit of a shallower entry to the site.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that does not, based on the town GIS, that does not appear to be within this parcel. But again, looking at it from a sightline standpoint, this is the best location from a sightline standpoint. And as you come down further here, you can see that you've got some significant grade changes. So we did walk up to the top of the site. It does flatten out somewhat and then starts dropping off dramatically off the rear, off the back of the parcel. You can see we're at elevation 600 here, down to an entrance of approximately 550 feet. So about a 50-foot grade change here. So you would definitely be lopping off the top of this area. But again, just for comparative purposes to what we've looked at already, this is a baseball diamond, this is a softball diamond, full soccer field. Again, building configuration, this would not be the configuration of a new building, but just for comparative purposes right now, we're sort of taking the diagram that we put together for the existing Hall Memorial School and placing it on the site. I think, this is an option. And again, once we get into an executive session, we can talk about a few other options that exist in addition to just renovating and putting the school on the existing site on 111 River Road. I think we probably would have to enter the site here, face follow the grade, move up slightly, get the buses up, and then work and circulate around this way. Just coming up an 8 to a 10% gradient would be too steep for buses, especially in the winter months. We certainly, as Ralph pointed out at our meeting, we want to carve out at least a 60 to 100 foot, in essence, almost flat area, so buses could settle themselves before pulling out onto Moose Meadow Road. I think as well, we would want to take a look at this road. This road is thinner than some in town. It does have a number of turns on it. So I think we would need to take a deeper dive and evaluate it as far as its function to be able to have the bus traffic coming to a site. So it could fit, it could work. I think that there may be some better options, but certainly, comparing it to this again is the existing Hall Memorial site. The potential for this site again to have area for future expansion certainly would make it, I think, a better choice if the state supported building a new school and an additional site could not be found. This site would at least afford the town future expansion, whereas the River Road property, again, this is a concept not meant to be, really picked apart in any way, really just looking at the program that's being developed by the Board of Education and Phil and his administrators to see how that would fit on this site. But again, as you can see, not a lot of room for expansion or to do much else in this site once the addition is done and we regrade, pushing a lot of the grade out towards the river, within 100 feet of the river, to create this baseball and softball field.
And
So
again, sorry,
Go ahead.
Scott, I would just remind the committee, this is a town-owned property and it looks like 36, a little over 36 acres. I'm not sure, it doesn't look like there's any wetlands on it, but we'd have to do some further studies to get actual, actual results on that.
Yeah. No, you're correct. There are, again, this is a matrix of the town-owned parcels that we looked at. Either, these two are conservation land. We had some with some very, very steep grades. So again, we've identified right now what we're calling parcel A, which is the existing parcel. We've started to put some of the pertinent information into the matrix, as well as parcel E, which we're referring to, which is Moose Meadow Road, which we're looking at right now. Again, sort of the negative factor here right now is 8 to 10% slopes. So certainly that would need to be resolved. I would say if we were really seriously going to look at this parcel, it would make sense to get a civil engineer involved and do a very quick grading and site analysis to really see how a roadway would fit, see how much cubic yardage of material we would need to remove from the top of that hill, potentially leveling it off a little bit more in this area. Probably, this top is at about 608 feet. We probably want to bring it down to somewhere around the 590 to 580 in here. This goes down to 570, down to 550. So again, there's a 20-foot drop here. You'd take a lot of this material and push it to the west, trying to level off the site. But I think, again, if we were going to seriously consider this, we'd want to take a deeper dive on this, procure some engineering fees, get a quick engineering study done of this as far as suitability and layout of a road.
Scott, I just pulled up the GIS I have access to. The west side of this property is wetland soils. So
Way down here. I didn't see necessarily any.
no, on this parcel, there are wetland soils on the west
Okay.
side.
Yes, this
No.
side, you're saying.
Correct.
Yeah.
And if you look at the contour lines, that kind of makes sense. Contour lines pointing up
everything-
towards the top are usually valleys
Mhm.
sloping down. So that makes sense that that's kind of wet down there.
Yeah, it's right. It's running this way. It's running from high point here this
Correct.
way. Here's 540, 550, 560. So it's it's moving that way.
Okay, thank you, Scott. So we've reviewed this one. You've got the hall one that you did a math model on as far as land goes, but the acreage is it just makes it for a much tighter site and minimal future expansion. So, but there is an option of existing, and there is an potential option of a new site. We're continuing to evaluate town-owned properties, as well as privately and for sale properties as well, which we'll discuss in executive session.
Catherine, Erica has her hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Erica.
You're muted.
Thank you.
Oh, there you
I'm not muted, Ralph. I'm waiting to be
Well,
recognized.
you were.
No, Ralph, please. Thank you, Catherine. So
I'm sorry.
while every site has pros and cons, I have some serious concerns about the location of this site. The roads certainly leading to this parcel, as Scott alluded to, are narrower than most. And not just that, they are in need of repair. So Moose Meadow has been a road for decades that has been identified as a road that needs some repair. We could not move forward with this site without factoring those costs into this, with every bus in town running to that site, and the traffic from all students and parents to that site would be significant. And that's on a good day. Certainly this area of town in winter weather is challenging at best for anyone who lives in that direction. So I want us to take a look at more than just that piece of property, but what it would take to get to that area and think about busing. So it's a significant concern and cost in maintaining or bringing those roads up to manageable use.
Yeah, and
Thank
just
you.
a point of clarity, just so everyone's aware, I know I've stated this in the past, but any off-site work, meaning any work over the property line, so any work over that property line would not be reimbursed by the state. So if there were any required road improvements, all of those would be 100% on the town of Willington.
And that's one of my concerns, Scott, is that you know, I mean, you see that road, that area seems a little bit wider, but as you get out closer to Route 74, I mean, in the other direction, trying to come into that road, there's significant challenges in that area.
Right. Yeah, understood. Definitely. Yeah. Heading, yeah, I've driven both north and south on that road, and certainly heading south towards 74 is, yeah. And that's why I noted it as a concern.
Thank you. Peter?
Question to Erica. Erica, if let's just say that site was the site of a new school, would we qualify for additional LoCIP funds from the state to improve that road, or is that like all bets off?
We get right now LoCIP funds, we get about $56,000 in LoCIP funds. So I don't know that would cover it. If a steep grant came about, we could look to see if we qualified there. But certainly at this point, there's not steep funding available now. There's been discussions of that. So we would look to that, Peter, but you know, this is part of the problem of pushing things off for many, many years leads to things like this. And we just, you know, we have a more rural areas in town, and this happens to be one of them. So would the timing of that coincide with the project? It remains to be seen. We
Thanks.
certainly would investigate if those funds became available, but I don't believe LoCIP would be the case, and LOTCIP, those roads would, I do not believe would qualify under LOTCIP grants.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. So I have a question actually to tack on to what Peter's question was. Erica, you mentioned that this road has been identified as a road in need of repair. So is it anywhere on a CIP program or anything like a look ahead 5 years from now, or like
no, it's not as a whole. I can tell you that this coming year, the Public Works Director had a plan for a portion of the road, and that's the portions closer to Turnpike Road. But then we had some significant damage done to that area of road. And so we're actually requesting funds to do about 3,900 feet of road coming in from Turnpike Road. But that doesn't even get us up to the intersection of Jared Sparks. So the road as a whole, no, you know, it's kind of been done in small patches. So the answer in short is no. But if we were to put a school out there, we would have to look at this as another piece of funding
Right.
and a non-reversible
think-
reimbursable piece.
And I think in addition, you mentioned Jared Sparks Road. It is very close to that intersection. So is there any thought to utilizing Jared Sparks Road as a better alternative than going up and down Moose Meadow with the buses? And obviously we're not going to all traffic, but certainly if we could keep the traffic onto Jared Sparks or another road instead of going up and down Moose Meadow. I mean, that might be a possibility. And then I was just going to suggest if we do continue as make a recommendation as Scott recommended with having it studied by a civil engineer, it might also be worth having a traffic study done on it as well. Just a suggestion. I don't think we're in a position to vote right now or even have it on the agenda for voting action, but just something to consider.
As far as
there
your comments about Jared Sparks, I would leave that to the Phil and busing coordinator to determine the best route for buses to come in. So my guess is that they might use many different routes depending on where the buses were coming from. So I'm not sure that it would make sense to push them all down to Jared Sparks to be able to come into that route. So I'm thinking of buses in the area of the side of town you live on, certainly to come. It would really depend on busing routes. So it's a possibility, but I don't know that you turn all buses that direction.
Thank you. Phil?
Scott, I'm just curious to know, with your experience with OSCGR, I mean, I think this is the place with a field, right? That's what's cleared. Isn't that where this location is? So
Correct.
that is a hill, right? So how would they look at that and go, there's no way we're going to pay for all that work to be done to level this out? Do they have a cut point? Like, how do they determine that?
Well, we would have to, there is a process, you know, once we get to that point, there's a whole approval process, which is Form SCG 053. And they would actually come out and walk the site as well. You know, I think in advance of that, if we were seriously going to consider that site, yeah, we would have to do some engineering and some thoughts and develop some budgets to prove to them it was viable from a financial standpoint, because you're correct. And originally I had taken it off the list, one, because of the infrastructure getting to the site and the road condition and size. And then I was also very concerned about the steep grades. But, you know, we walked it with, you know, members of the site selection committee, and it was requested to do a test fit and just present that as an option. Again, I don't believe it's the best option, but it may be the next best option as far as publicly owned land currently.
Right. And Scott, you hit the nail on the head. It is town owned. So the cost of purchasing land would not be part of the project. So I mean, that's one of the reasons why we wanted to keep it on the list. And I know that the site, it's not flat, but we're not going to find a flat, cushy site in Willington. There's no doubt that we're going to experience rocks and roots and hills. And that's just what we have. And I feel strongly that we should keep it on the list, especially because it's a town-owned property, and possibly even take some further steps into having a civil study done for feasibility and possibly a traffic study to look at the roads to it. I mean, so far, Scott, how many sites have you looked at already of town-owned properties? And we're only seeing maybe a couple that are viable?
at all town-owned properties that were 19 acres and above, that list provided by the planning department. And in an actuality, I have looked at all public and private parcels that are vacant, don't have any buildings on them, in excess of 19 acres for the entire town, which was more than 129 parcels. So that was the better part of what my efforts have been since we met last. I did get that complete list from the planning department. So we have reviewed just over 129 different parcels.
Yeah, so there's been some significant effort, and we're only narrowing it down to, so far, we've got one town-owned, possibly a privately owned, and I'm not sure what else. Peter?
A question to both Scott and Ralph. How does this site compare to, say, in terms of flatness, if you will, to the Youngerman town-owned property?
From my perspective, I think it's better. We will not have to contend with a wetland or watercourse crossing, which we would with the Youngerman property. Site-wise, grading-wise, and the egress onto Ruby Road is horrible. So I think this is an improvement over the Youngerman property without doing any reconfiguration of 320, which we can't do anyway because that's a state route. So I think it's better. The fact that Jared Sparks was recently paved, the pavement's great, but the road width on Jared Sparks isn't appreciably different than Moose Meadow, and it's up and down and windy. So
Yeah.
it's really the same quality of road. It's just got better pavement. So it's a challenge. It would be a challenge, I think, for buses. So we're still we haven't found a sweet site yet.
Right.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to what Ralph said. I think he hit the nail on the head. You've got some significant soils issues, wetlands issues, and topography is much steeper than this site. And again, this site, my original, I drove by it the first time, and after driving by the road, I said I took it kind of off the list. And then, after visiting it with the members of the selection committee, I said, okay, let's put it back on, because it was really our only publicly owned viable parcel outside of the current Hall Memorial site.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Scott.
Brianna, your hand's hidden.
Oh, yes, it is. Hi, Brianna. Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to ask, and maybe this was said and I missed it. Is it possible that we would need to do some road improvement to even get machinery and vehicles to the site on Moose Meadow in the first place?
I don't think so.
I don't understand
No.
your
I
question.
think she,
Well, you talked about,
I hear
like,
she's,
road stuff and flatbeds and stuff like that, material. They
I'm
would
hearing
actually-
Erica say that they're narrow and in need of repair. So like, can we even get vehicles through there, or are we gonna have to have the town pay for work to the roads so we can damage them more with our equipment and then need to fix them again? What's happening with that? How would that work?
can I take a little bit of a shot at that, Catherine? Okay, so they are passable. They're narrow. They're just, narrow in the way that they were built years ago. So they have their challenges. I wouldn't say that we wouldn't be able to use them, but a couple of months ago, I wouldn't have said that we would have seen the kind of damage we saw on the other end of Moose Meadow Road. So
Right.
anything is possible after repeated construction traffic. It is possible. There is a construction company that it is at one end of Moose Meadow Road. We haven't had a problem from their traffic, but we did see some concern after some construction trucks had been going in that area. So it's possible. I couldn't say absolutely, but I couldn't say no either. So I can tell you that they are passable roads. It's not as though they can't be used. That they've needed some love, but they are less traveled roads than others in town. So it would remain to be seen, but I would want to see us probably do some work to those roads before we got to that point, because again, what we saw at the other end of Moose Meadow was not anything anyone anticipated.
That's
But I
regarding
will,
stop traffic. that-
yeah, so it was construction materials. I
Okay.
will tell you though, that in the CIP plan, that if it moves through the budget process, is some pavement management software that will give us some data to show, give us a little bit more data about the conditions of all of the roads in town. So that would be one we'd really be taking a close look at.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Brianna, any other comments? And I'm sorry, I'm trying to see who's got their hand up and stuff, and I apologize. It's not on purpose if I miss you.
Now, sometimes they blend into the background.
Yes. Any other discussion on the update that Scott gave us and the site that we were talking about on Moose Meadow?
Can I ask what your next steps are there then? What is the land committee gonna do next with that property?
I think
So
we're gonna,
Go ahead, Ralph.
okay.
Go ahead.
I don't think we've ruled this one out, Phil. I think that Scott's right. If we were between this and something more challenging, we definitely have to get into some detail about this kind of site work involved to make it work. I think we need to continue looking at other parcels.
I agree. Gary, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I don't, I mean, just like all the sites we've looked at, I'm not jumping up and down about it. But I think it's good enough to, as Ralph said, to not eliminate it from the list at this point. However, I don't think it's worth investing in anything at this point until I think we need to go a little farther down the line and cross some other things out before that, that comes to pass.
I agree. Does that help, Phil?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other discussion on this item? Peter, were you going to say something?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So let's move on. We did already talk about the discussion of future use of school buildings, item B. So we'll jump down to new business, item A, which is updating the frequently asked questions document. So I can't remember when it was last published, but our communications subcommittee had put together a list of FAQs, and that's published. And we'd like to just update it with some of the questions that we recently had from public to speak, and any other questions that the committee may have from our last update. And so we put this on the agenda tonight to get people's feedback on what other questions we want to put on our update list, and basically list some factual information that the public will have and understand the process that we've been going through. So this is being opened up for discussion to the committee members. Anne?
I think I know this fairly well since we've been working on it. I think the newest things that might be relevant to include would be the Prada study. I don't believe that's included on there. And I also think our whole hiring process of colliers, a little summary of that. And that kind of brings us, I think that's our newest steps that we've taken since it was last updated. I think we want to be more definitive about talking about options, I think, until we have more information about each of the two options and even what the process will be, possibly.
Thank you, Ann. That actually that hits on a couple of items that are already in the Willington Wire.
Yes.
So we could possibly take some of those paragraphs, turn them into questions, and answer them as sort of the update. Basically, instead of it being in paragraph form, turn it into a question, answer, and then that'll be a good update to put on that.
Yeah, great idea.
Any other questions that you guys think we should add? Well, why don't we do this? If you guys think of any questions that that you know have not been answered or has already been answered but should be published in that updated FAQs document, if you want to send those to me in an email to the SBC email, I will get those over to the subcommittee for communications, and we can get started on updating that document. So just a reminder, I believe it's Phil and Ann that are part of that communication subcommittee, correct?
And
Okay,
Catherine,
great.
prior to our first public meeting, I can certainly assist in, we've got a list in developing some of the frequently asked questions, but they're going to need to be tailored a little bit to the overall project and discussions that we need to have with the state. So again, slightly premature on that, but once we've had our discussion with the state, we'll be able to anticipate a lot of those frequently asked questions so we can have those answers right out front for our first public information session.
That'd be great. Thank you, Scott.
Do we want to include Scott on our committee? Scott?
Sure,
No?
just let him know when the meetings are and
No, I think your input is very valuable because there's the right time to introduce each piece of information. And I think
Right.
based on your experience, your input is very important.
Yeah, especially when you're talking numbers, because the first number you put out there is going to be the one that sticks. And you got to make sure that those numbers are accurate and correct.
yeah, so maybe, I'm not sure, Scott, if you have the latest FAQs document that was issued. So if you don't, is that, Phil, is that on our Google Drive? Okay. Yeah, so you'll be able to see what was already published, Scott. I don't know that we shared any numbers in there, but maybe something to take a look at. Erica, did you have your hand up? No, okay, just saying hello. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Phil. All right, next item on new business, discussion of Birch Grove School site visit. So this was a site visit that all of the committee members were invited to go to the Tallinn Birch Grove School. It's a brand new school, and I believe they just moved in this past 2021 school year. And so far they love it. It's definitely a beautiful school. It's grades pre-K through 2, I believe, or K through 2. And they have, I thought they said like 600 students. Phil, am I quoting that correctly? 500 students. So it's a different scope of what we're trying to do because we're obviously combining 2 elementary and middle school for a cap of around 400. So this was a much larger scale school, but it gave us a good perspective of the potential of what a new school would look like and how it would function. So we wanted to put this on the agenda to have a discussion about what your thoughts were about the tour, and maybe how we could maybe take some thoughts from that tour into our evaluation of a new school. So the floor is open. Erica?
First, I just want to thank Superintendent, is it Willett? Is that how you say his name, Phil? And Principal Tom Swanson and his staff for allowing us to come in. It was wonderful to see that site as a neighbor and someone who frequently drives that area. It was nice to be able to go inside, but to allow our entire committee to come in and see their site, I'm certainly appreciative. It was incredible to see the things that we could do from a programming standpoint, not just the architectural pieces, the things that are important uses, but to see the things that they're able to do in a way we just aren't able to do with our schools based on the age of the schools and how learning was developed over the years. So the natural light in that building was incredible. I think we all can recognize that even in addition to Hall School will leave us challenges of having natural light in the center area of that school. And it was great to see. I was there on a beautiful sunny day. I think the second tour was kind of a gloomier day. So I'd be curious to hear from those folks what was done from a security standpoint. Some of the features that they had in place were really, I think they were important features for us to see. I will say that our previous superintendent and Phil have done incredible work with the security in our schools, and I feel that they're safe and secure. There's so many more things we can do and that we should be doing, and our new or renovated school will allow us to do that. But I mean, just the use of spaces, they had some multi-use spaces in that cafeteria and the gym space. And while it's not the ideal auditorium we'd like, we can see how we could flex some space. And I appreciated the common areas and the way that they could be used in a multitude of ways for learning during the day. They were just warm and inviting, and the enthusiasm for Mr. Swanson as he toured that building was incredible. You couldn't help but love it there, and you couldn't help but I couldn't help but want our students in the future to have a more 21st century friendly facility. Some of my quick thoughts, I could talk about that school for a long time.
Thank you, Erica. Anyone else want to share your feedback? Justin?
So I'd say for me, I mean, beside how the school looks and the appearance and everything, talking about the utility bills and the cost savings that they had just on a school that was 20 years old compared to what they have now. They were saying they're almost 30% on their utility bills. From us having two schools that are considerably older in age and trying to combine into one, for me, there's got to be some type of savings here for us to go to a better facility, even if that is just renovating, but there's so many things that were nice to see in that school.
Thank you. Brianna, what did you think? I'm putting you on the spot. As a teacher, what did you think about how they broke up the spaces and the learning opportunities that they had with the flexible furniture and the storage opportunities, outside spaces? I mean, what does that look like from a teacher's point of view?
Awesome. Okay, we really don't have time for me to go on and on about all of the things that I noticed, learned, am envious of, and so on. I do need to thank Ralph and Mike for having patience with me because I had some questions about things that were new to me from my perspective in school building. So I appreciate them taking the time to help me understand things that I don't normally experience. So thanks for that. I had a lot to say. I have a lot to think. I think though, the one thing I keep going, well, of course, I have to say, I'm always thinking about those bathrooms because I teach kindergarteners and so I have a lot about that. But anyway, I loved the big open space. I know that the high ceilings and wide hallways were attractive to many people. And it was very beautiful, of course. From a teaching standpoint, someone who works with little children, who works in a primary age hallway, the long straight hallways is a wonderful place for sprinting. And the super high ceilings offer an incredible echo that would be really fun to experiment with. And also I was thinking, as neat as high ceilings are for us as grownups walking in there, for little people who need to feel comfort, that might have been extremely overwhelming. And I could see myself making adaptations and modifications, like offering children the opportunity to wear baseball caps or something when they're walking in those super tall, amazing common hallways. So I think from one perspective, it was beautiful and amazing, just that particular aspect of it. But also in the back of my head, I was kind of already thinking about how for some children that actually would be very uncomfortable or not give them the security that they need as a person, a little person in a big place. So that's just one thing I'm still kind of hung up on, because at first I loved it. I thought it was amazing. And then about a day or so later, I started thinking about those children, those students. So that was one of the things I still am kind of going over in my head a little bit, but there was a lot to say, a lot to notice, and a lot to appreciate. So I am very glad for the opportunity, certainly.
Awesome, thank you. Ralph?
Just one observation from my perspective. Now, I'm not a teacher, so I'm not going to challenge Brianna or anyone else on how their perceptions of that school. It is beautiful. There's no doubt about that. The single story spread out configuration, I think, offers a bit of a drawback, particularly for the school nurse, getting to those far classrooms in a hurry. I see that as a challenge. I think that, and I don't know exactly how a school would be configured to put the administrative and the support staff offices more central than they are. I understand why they are where they are, because it's close to the entrance, but I think there's probably a better arrangement that would keep those key support staff as close as possible to the classrooms. This is one of the disadvantages of a single-story school, I think. I think the travel distance from the far classroom to the central office is actually shorter in a two-story school. Now, and that can work in our favor because of the fact that we're combining elementary and middle. You know, putting the middle school students on the upper level more so than the lower grades. The other thing that, and this is just the civil engineer in me coming out, there's a lot of impervious surface on that site. Now, Tallinn was blessed with 325 acres for 2 schools and a recreation complex. So I can understand they have the elbow room to do that. But the impervious surface creates a problem with respect to stormwater and a lot of roof maintenance. So it's just something to factor into our thinking with whatever direction we wind up going.
Thank you, Ralph. Great comments. Anyone else? Ann?
I kind of reacting to Ralph's comment. I agree with him. We were joking with the principal about how he needs a segue to get to different corners of the building.
Yes.
You know, every time he has to go somewhere. And I just got an idea from your thought, Ralph, that if we were to have more of a satellite building where we had instead just a couple wings coming out. And one reason I would really like that is, number one, we'd have a lot of light. Okay, you guys need to go out and close the door, please. I have grandchildren here. The other thing I really loved were the courtyard spaces, which were created between wings. And if we did go with that satellite thing, that would give us even more of those courtyard spaces. They had a little patio that had 4 picnic tables on it, which would be perfect for a whole class of children. So it'd be a wonderful opportunity for kids to be able to learn outside. And they also had their playscapes embedded in those little areas between wings, especially for pre-K and K. So that was something else I really liked, was all that, the outdoor space to work with.
Thank you, Anne. Any other comments?
Okay.
Erica?
Just quick, and I might have, alluded to this in my comments. I think we could all talk about what we loved and what we didn't like and what might work for Willington and what might not. But I think what I got out of it most, and again, I said before, is just seeing what a newly renovated or a new facility can bring in opportunities for our students. And that's what, I keep in the back of my mind as we move through this project is providing a better 21st century space for our learners. And that's what I got out of that facility. There are lots of things, and Brianna's comments really make me think different about the open and high ceilings. So I appreciate that perspective. But just what opportunities that we can have as we rethink the way our schools look and can look for this group of students in the future of Willington. I think that aside from the aesthetics and aside from the layout, I think we could fix all those things that are tailored to better serve Willington, but the better educational opportunities we can give as a whole.
Thank you, Erica.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that. I agree, Erica. I think the perspective and the point of the visit is just to see what the potential is. One thing I didn't expect to walk away was from Birch Grove thinking about was when we were there, I think it was the first visit, I asked teachers questions when they were in their rooms. And I wasn't prepared for one of the teachers' answers when she said, I came to work here because it's a brand new building. And there is something to be said about that, and whether it's a renovation or a new building, but the recruitment of staff is that's important. And so no matter what the building looks like, and I agree with a lot of the comments, lots of roof space. There's a lot of pros to that building. There's some things that I would adjust as well. But I just thought that perspective was really interesting. I mean, she just came out and the principal said it. And the teacher agreed, I came to work here because it was a brand new, beautiful building. Something really important and just something to take away.
Thank you, Phil. Brianna, is that another hand up?
Yeah, Phil was reminding me in his comments there right before we left. I was sort of looking down that long hall and he wanted to know what in the world was crossing my mind at that point. And I said, I just was kind of thinking about what it would be like to go to work there. And like he was just saying about think about the staff too. I mean, we want to inspire our students. We want them to know they can reach as high as those ceilings go and higher, and that we're going to help them every step of the way. Isn't that what we want for our community's children, right? And right now you have a lot of teachers leaving the profession. It is hard to get dedicated, qualified educators to come to your district, stay there, and commit to your community's children. So not only do you need to be inspiring to the little ones that are there, but you need to be inspiring to the staff as well. And being in a place where you have natural light, being in a place with a nursing room for brand new mothers, being in a place where you are a part of a community that obviously, just by looking around in the physical space, supports their youngsters, is something that is going to encourage this kind of staff to come to our town and to stay. And if we have children that are happy and feel that sense of endless possibility, and we have staff that's inspired and excited to be there and bringing the children along on that journey, then I'm quite certain We will have families very interested in coming to our town of Willington to participate in something that we
Agreed.
already have here in Willington, a beautiful, wonderful community that supports one another. But if we add just a little bit more of that to our school system, it has got to be enticing to others, not just teachers, but families as well. And that's something kind of in the back of my head too. As a mom, as an educator, as someone who's lived here most of my lifetime, those are kinds of things that I'm thinking about too. And I just really hope the best for our community as a whole. And if there's anything I'm going to be proud of in this town, it's our school system.
Absolutely. Well said, Brianna.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ditto.
Any other comments? Peter, what did you think?
I apologize. I missed my Monday tours. I was out of town.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm at a loss here. But interesting to
think
hear all the
every-
perspectives on
Yeah,
what
that's,
everyone thinks is important.
yeah, I'd like to just add to what everybody said. I mean, I think it's great to hear the different perspectives, especially, you know, Brianna, you mentioned the high ceilings. I never even thought of that from a child's perspective, but yes, it could be overwhelming to be looking at those high ceilings. But the beauty of it that we saw is the natural light coming in, and that is certainly something, if we do get into a point of a new school or even a renovated school, we can bring in that natural light. The other thing is the 21st century learning. That can also be done with a brand new school and a renovated project. So there are a lot of features that this new school had, this Birch Grove school had, that can be implemented into a renovation as well. Sometimes it's hard to see the vision of a renovation project, but having worked on many throughout my career, there is a good vision at the end of the light. So just to give a little bit of hope on either option, I think it is great that we did get to go see this new school, because it really tells us everything you guys mentioned about the 21st century learning, about all the different flexible spaces that they created for learning opportunities with the furniture that they had, the cost savings in the utility, the outdoor spaces with the courtyards. These are all things that we can try to implement in a renovation or a new school. So I appreciate everybody's feedback. I thought this was great. And if anybody has any other comments, we'll give it another second. And with that said, we can move on to the next item.
Hey, Catherine, can I just pause for a second? And
absolutely.
Scott Pellman, I don't want to put you on the spot, so feel free to say pass. Because it wasn't your project. I'm curious to know if you've walked Hall School, you know, a renovation, you've seen new buildings. Did you have any thoughts walking out of there that you think would really impact Willington, or things that would be hard to do, or would, you know, things that could easily be achieved? Kind of what that Catherine was just saying, but I was curious to hear your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, you know, comparing it to I guess that you're asking me to compare it to the existing school, certainly, you know, the possibilities of natural light and views, you know, no matter what you do to Hall Memorial School, you are not going to achieve that level of daylighting and, you know, that positive influence that natural daylight has on learning and the human experience. Certainly the flexibility, you know, we've talked about, you know, those breakout spaces, and you saw those, you know, clearly areas within the corridors where you could pull out a few students or a small class or a gathering and have those informal personal teaching opportunities, and really let the teachers decide and use those spaces and however they see fit, you know, having that flexibility, the flexibility with the gymnasium, auditorium, cafeteria all tied together. Again, not really an opportunity at your existing site that you have, but it affords a possibility of much larger gatherings, you know, while really creating a space that is, from a utilization standpoint, can get utilized a lot more. And that's going to be the key, because you've got a smaller school. You've only got 400 kids. So, you know, we've talked about it, that the new school, if that's the direction you choose, really needs to be flexible and look to the 21st century. You know, the other thing I was looking at walking through there is just, you know, the materials, low maintenance materials. Now, it doesn't mean you can't get low maintenance materials in a renovation project. Certainly in a new building, and again, compared to some of the other buildings I've designed, yes, the ceilings were quite high, especially in the main concourse. Again, clearly their direction, not necessarily the direction that you're going to take with your project. But as far as building environment, interior environment, air changes, fresh air, air quality, which again is so important, as we all know with this COVID era that we've been in, you know, in trying to suffer through that. So, you know, a new building with some of those higher ceilings affords you the opportunities for that large ductwork, 100% outside air, meaning you're not recirculating air through the facility. You know, so those opportunities for health of the building, health of the occupants, where in a renovation project, you will struggle, you know, under the existing steel with some of the constraints of an existing building, you know, hands down, I've done a lot of them, you know, you're going to struggle on putting the ductwork in, and there'll be compromises where you don't necessarily have those compromises in a new structure. You know, the new building's air conditioned. You know, there's ways to incorporate air conditioning into existing buildings, but it's a different approach. So I think it was a great exercise. I absolutely wholeheartedly agree with the length of travel. I thought it was excessive. I mean, I joked around while we were standing in the hallway and said, you know, you could easily do a 100-yard dash in this room and clock the kids with no problem. You know, you made great points to, you know, I had the opportunity to actually, I wrote the ed spec and then had a chance to visit Sandy Hook when it was completed, or worked on the ed spec. I didn't write the whole thing, but theirs was much more similar to what I think Ann and a few of the others were looking at, which was more of a centrally located administrative area, and then the wings radiated off that. And so, you know, I think a lot of valid points. Again, I think in this case, because of bus drop-off, parent drop-off configurations in the land, I think they were sort of forced to putting the admin at that one end and had to go linear the way they did. So that's, you know, certainly is always a factor of your final land selection. Again, does the final land selection give you the opportunity to really put the vision of the building that you want on that site? And I think that's going to be an important consideration.
Thank you, Scott. All right, if there's no other comments about the discussion on the Birch Grove School site visit that we had, we can move on into executive session. I believe we have to have a motion to enter executive session. Is there a motion to move into executive session to discuss private site?
You're muted, Ann.
I move that we go into executive session to discuss private sites.
I'll second for that and potential real estate transactions as per state statute.
And include Scott Pellman.
Right.
Okay, so do we have to vote on that? We have to vote? We do, okay. Is there a discussion and then we vote, or do we just vote? Let's vote to go into executive session. So all in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays? Okay, let's go into executive session.
Hang on.
Okay, we got back out of executive session. Our next business item is future business for future agenda items. Does anybody have any items that you want to add for our next agenda? Our next meeting will be on April 20th.
Can I just ask, that happens to be during spring break, that if folks could maybe respond to you, Catherine, I know you talked about summertime and vacation, if a quorum would be an issue during spring break. I don't have any kids, so there's no such thing as a spring break around here. Oh, no, I don't have any kids in school. But if that's gonna be an issue, we know. But you spoke to us earlier about being in touch with Mrs. Castles. So I'd be curious to see if that meeting was one she might be prepared to come to speak to. And as far as future agenda items, not agenda item, but future business, do we want to continue to conduct our meetings in this manner? Or a hybrid manner or a fully in-person manner? The bill is moved to the House. Gary, unless you heard anything today, I didn't. It's been moved to the House and the Senate. So I hope they take action before such time as the current language sunsets.
Thank you, Erica. So I've got Hall Foundation discussion. If she gets back to me before our next meeting, I'll add that to the agenda. And then hybrid in-person meetings, I'll put that on as a, God, I see you rubbing your eyes. I know it's getting late.
I'll tell you, Kathy, we had a Board of Finance meeting last night. The full board was in attendance and we had about 20 people in the room. It was kind of nice to be back in the room and with board members in the same space. So I'd like us to think about that.
Thank you. Any other items for our next meeting? You know, we'll have our typical items regarding meeting minutes, communications. So if you do have something, just email me or I'll stay on another minute here. Okay, and then present to speak. Is there anyone on the call? I don't see anyone. That's a non-committee member. So, all right, I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting. It's 9:31. Any objections?
How about a second for your motion?
Okay. Thank you, Ralph. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Say
Aye.
All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good night.
No,